There's a reason why I haven't been watching a lot of Bernie Sanders stuff since October 7. His rhetoric on the matter went from worse to just like still pretty bad. And it hurts my soul to see someone who I love so much repeat that propaganda line. Anyway, let's watch this asshole now.
State Antony Blinken. Secretary Blinken, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Morning, Kristen.
Thank you so much for being here. I want to start with that State Department report that did not draw a definitive conclusion about Israel, whether it's violated international law. Amnesty International says of the report, this is the, quote, international version of sending thoughts and prayers. Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen says it ducks the ultimate questions that the report was designed to determine. Mr. Secretary, is the U.S. trying to avoid holding Israel accountable for its actions?
No.
Yes.
We don't have double standards. We treat Israel, one of our closest allies and partners, just as we would treat any other country, including in assessing something like international humanitarian law and its compliance with that law. I would invite people to read the report. They can see for themselves everything that we've laid out in the report. The report also makes clear that this is an incredibly complex military environment. You have an enemy that intentionally embeds itself with civilians, hiding under and within schools, mosques, apartment buildings, firing at the Israeli forces from those places. It's very, very difficult in the heat of war to make a definitive assessment about any individual incident. But what the report concludes is that based on the totality of the harm that's been done to children, to women, to men who are caught in this crossfire Hamas is making, it's reasonable to conclude that there are instances where Israel has acted in ways that are not consistent with international humanitarian law. At the same time, Kristen, we continue to look at, investigate each of these incidents, but critically, so does Israel. There are hundreds, as we understand it, of open inquiries into particular incidents that have taken place since October 7th. There are criminal investigations that are going forward. Israel, unlike many other countries, has both the means and the will to try to police itself. So we need to let those play out. But our own process that has been underway for many months to look at individual incidents, that will continue as well. And when we can reach definitive conclusions, we will. But it's very difficult to do that in the midst of a war.
And I hear you saying how complex the situation is on the ground. But here we are in the 7th month of this war, Mr. Secretary. How is it possible that the State Department, with all of its resources, was not able to reach a definitive conclusion on this critical question of whether Israel has violated international law?
Again, precisely because we continue to be in the midst of that war. And making these assessments in real time, when we don't have people on the ground, when we also have to make sure that we're getting information from all concerned, that takes time, and we want to make sure that we can reach definitive conclusions. But as the report makes clear, given the totality of the damage that's been done to civilians, to children, to women, to men, given that, given the fact that Israel clearly has procedures, rules, regulations, laws that go into the targeting decisions they make, the way they conduct themselves, but the results that we've seen in terms of the horrible loss of life of innocent civilians, it's reasonable to assess, as we say in the report, that there are instances where they've acted inconsistent with their obligations under international humanitarian law. Those investigations continue, both by us and by Israel.
Let's zoom out a little bit and talk about U.S. policy. The U.S. has urged Israel not to invade Rafah, yet troops are already on the ground. And this weekend, we learned that over 300,000 people are being evacuated. President Biden threatened to withhold certain weapons if Netanyahu goes into Rafah in a full-scale invasion, while at the same time sending in other weapons. Big picture, why should Israel believe that the U.S. is willing to back up its threats?
Well, first, let's step back for 1 minute. No one has done more to defend Israel when it mattered than President Biden. He was there in the days after October 7th, the first president to go to Israel in the midst of a conflict. When Iran mounted an unprecedented attack on Israel some weeks ago, 300 projectiles, including ballistic missiles, launched at Israel, the United States, for the first time ever, participated in its active defense, and President Biden brought together a coalition of countries that helped defend Israel. So no one has done more than Joe Biden. At the same time, what we've seen over the last few months is a deep concern on our part about the possibility of a major military operation in Rafah. Given the damage it would do to civilians, there are more than 1.4 million Gazans in Rafah, most of whom have moved from other parts of Gaza. Absent a credible plan to get them out of harm's way and to support them, President.
I like when he says no one's done more than Biden to defend Israel, because it really just reaffirms my lack of interest in ever voting for Biden or the Democratic Party. It's just like, yeah, I know. Thanks, man. Thanks for repeating that line over and over again. It's like no one, and I mean no one, has done more to defend the Israeli genocide of the Palestinian population than the United States of America, baby. Let's go. Just going on news to just flex on the haters, being like, listen, bro, we love this shit. We ride and we die. Okay? Get them out of harm's way where, yeah, it's in a normal world, every single person that says this kind of shit or is in a position of power should be feeling incredibly embarrassed, scared of the political consequences, scared of being scared of potentially getting into legal trouble in an international tribunal. But we do not live in a normal world. We live in the worst world. We live in shit world over here. It sucks. Upwards of 20 American doctors, by the way, as we're having this conversation, are trapped at the European hospital in Gaza, facing extreme dehydration. At least one is on an IV drip. This is a developing situation. The State Department tells me it is working around the clock and coordinating with Israel and Egypt to evacuate the doctors. Yet a UN vehicle heading to the European hospital was fired on by the IDF today, killing its driver. The Israeli army, IDF, opened fire on the UN vehicle. The driver of the official vehicle with the UN logo and flag was killed, and a UN employee was injured in the attack. But of course, guys, remember, they learned their lesson since the World Central Kitchen, right? They learned their lesson. Just kidding. We didn't teach them a lesson. So, of course, the lesson that they learned was go ahead. Go ahead, big dog. Keep popping off on UN officials and aid workers. They've killed so many. Why would they stop? That's why him saying Israel has the means to police itself means absolutely nothing. Because just because a country has the means to police itself doesn't mean they have the interest in doing so. And especially when the big dog in the room, the daddy in the room, the United States of America, is not telling Israel, like, cut this shit out. We're gonna actually stop funding your shit. Okay? Why would they? They're learning all of the correct lessons that we're teaching Israel, that they can get away with doing everything they want to get away with. What's to stop us from just flying some damn Blackhawks in there and getting them out? Is the IDF going to fire on U.S. Army helicopters? First of all, the question should be, why the f*** are they in a state of disarray, in a state of dehydration? It's a hospital in an area that was previously declared a safe zone, okay? Where the f*** is that? What's that about? And also, if you think that Israel wouldn't shoot at American soldiers, you're out of your dang mind. They're going to send in a goddamn Black Hawk, and then the Black Hawk is going to drop. Even without the Israeli soldiers shooting at it, it's just going to explode the moment it goes over Israeli airspace, because that's just what Black Hawks do. I'm not even joking. Yeah, they should send in an Osprey next, too, after the Black Hawk. I am not at USS Liberty to discuss. Yeah, that's why you send two, dummy. Yeah, so both blow up. 50 years later, the NSA keeps details of Israel's USS Liberty attack a secret. News note and documents provide precious new details about an incident that remains shrouded and controversial. On June 8th, 1967, an Israeli torpedo tore through the side of an unarmed American naval vessel, USS Liberty, approximately a dozen miles off the Sinai coast. The ship, whose crew was a command of the National Security Agency, was intercepting communications at the height of the Six-Day War when it came under direct Israeli aerial and naval assault. Reverberations from the torpedo blast sent crewman Ernie Gallo flying across the radio research room where he was stationed. Gallo, a communication technician aboard the Liberty, found himself and his fellow shipmates in the midst of an attack that would leave 34 Americans dead and 171 wounded. This week marks the 50th. This was in 2017. 2017 was the 50th anniversary of the assault on USS Liberty. And though it was among the worst attacks in the history against a non-combatant U.S. naval vessel, the tragedy remains shrouded in secrecy. The question of if and when Israeli forces became aware they were killing Americans has proved a point of particular contention in the on-again, off-again public debate that has simmered over the last half a century. So it kind of doesn't matter. I said Vissel, shut up. I hope you guys, maybe develop a different understanding now that you know that at least. When you ask the question, like, oh, would Israel what is Israel going to do? Shoot at, like, American troops? The answer is yes.
It's been clear for some time that we couldn't and would not support a major military operation in Rafah. Now, at the same time, we share Israel's objective of making sure that Hamas cannot govern Gaza anymore, that it be demilitarized, that Israel get its leaders. We continue to support that. But there's a better way of achieving that than going headlong into Rafah. That's what we're talking about with Israel now. We have a better way of doing it. We're engaged in conversations with them about that. But the president, answering a question, was very clear about where we are on Rafah itself and what we would do or not do in the event that they go with a major military.
Even if these dumb fucks are insanely Zionist, do they not know how to do politics? Like, they will probably end up losing the election because Gen Z voters not showing up to vote for Brandon because of this issue. So why not at least posture like they care about Palestinians? They posture about everything else. Why not this? There needs to be communication discipline on any and every mention of Israel. And you literally just cannot mention the Palestinian plight. This is a new phenomena in comparison to the past 20, 30 years. I would say we're even organs of the American government are even mentioning Palestinian victims of Israel's violence. So what you're seeing is actually a sea change, but it should be a clear indication of how bad things are. You know what I mean? Like, in the last 20, 30 years, we wouldn't even mention Palestinians that are being killed. In many of the communications after October 7, you still, from like all matter of PR, something as marginal or rather insignificant as like a college campus doing PR. Chapo talked to a former spokesperson for one of the colleges that quit their job after October 7. And like part of the reason why they quit was because they thought it was unconscionable that like when attacks were happening against like students, pro-Palestinian students on campus, that the school would just be like, yeah, don't even bring it up. Don't even cover it. So that's usually the modus operandi. No mention of the Palestinians or the Palestine as a state, Gaza as a place. Like usually it's not even a thing that you mention. So the fact that Blinken is even mentioning it is obviously gross because like it's just so marginal the way he mentions it, but it's actually surprising in the grand scheme of things.
Separation.
I hear you saying you haven't seen a credible plan yet for how Israel would go into Rafah and mitigate civilian casualties. Is it fair to say that President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu are not seeing eye to eye right now?
There are two things. One is that, as the president said, and as we said in many conversations over the last couple of months, there has to be a credible plan for the civilians.
Have you seen a credible plan?
To make sure. We have not. Second, there's something else that's important. We also haven't seen a plan for what happens the day after this war in Gaza ends. Because right now, the trajectory that Israel is on is, even if it goes in and takes heavy action in Rafah, there will still be thousands of armed Hamas left. We've seen in areas that Israel has cleared.
That's why they need to kill more.
Even in Khan Yunis, Hamas coming back. So the trajectory right now is that going into to Rafah, even to deal with these remaining battalions, especially in the absence of a plan for civilians, risks doing terrible harm to civilians and not solving the problem, a problem that both of us want to solve, which is making sure Hamas cannot again govern Gaza. Israel's on the trajectory potentially to inherit an insurgency with many armed Hamas left, or if it leaves, a vacuum filled by chaos, filled by anarchy, and probably refilled by Hamas. We've been talking to them about a much better way of getting an enduring result, enduring security, both in Gaza itself and much more broadly in the region. Those conversations continue, and that's what partners, that's what allies do. We are clear-eyed, and we speak the truth to each other as we see it. We have American interests first and foremost in mind. We also have Israel's interests in mind. And there may be a difference in view in the best way.
A simple disagreement. That's all you need to know. It's just, guys, it's just a couple of simple disagreements happening here. But you know, nothing to see here, nothing too crazy. Just you know, Israel's doing its very best, and we think that, you know, it's doing great, and maybe it should keep doing great. Don't worry about it. Why the do they think that this is going to teach Israel anything about restraint? It won't. It will not. It is doing the exact opposite. You're telling them you're giving them the go ahead. It's bullshit.
To achieve them, but that's also the nature of the relationship.
I want to drill down with you on President Biden's threat to withhold weapons. What exactly is his red line, Mr. Secretary? What would trigger him to say, I am now withholding weapons?
Look, we don't talk about red lines when it comes to Israel. We talk again.
President Biden did talk about a red line, though, Mr. Secretary, respectfully.
Let me be. Yeah.
Damn. I mean, that's the most contentious media, mainstream media, especially MSNBC is ever going to get, or NBC News is ever going to get. She literally raised her voice. That's kind of wild. Let's run that back.
Weapons. Threat to withhold weapons. What exactly is his red line, Mr. Secretary? What would trigger him to say, I am now withholding weapons?
Look, we don't talk about red lines when it comes to Israel. We talk again.
President Biden did talk about a red line, though, Mr. Secretary, respectfully.
Let me be clear.
What would trigger him to make that decision?
I mean, this is the kind of hard-hitting journalism we need the whole time. One, it's too little, too late, and two, I mean, even any person that sits in that position obviously can't have any kind of self-respect after not hitting that line there. Like, there is a limitation to how much dick riding the media will do to the State Department. Like, you can't literally say there's going to be a red line and then allow Israel to cross it. Like, it's the bare minimum of what she's supposed to be doing here. It's also sad because the reality is Anthony Blinken is correct. Biden and his like supposed red line that keeps conveniently being drawn around the periphery of Israeli occupying forces is closer to Blinken's understanding than what Biden presented it as. Biden said that there is a red line, except he did not enforce it. Anthony Blinken is saying there are no red lines when it comes to Israel. And he's correct. It's the bear hug attitude. This is precisely what the Biden administration communicated to Israel in early October.
Sure. So first, we have been holding back, and we're in active conversations with Israel about the provision of heavy or high payload weapons, large bombs, because of the concern that we have about the effect these weapons can have when they're used in a dense urban environment, like Rafah. We're discussing that with Israel right now. Second, what the president said is that if Israel goes in with a major military operation in Rafah, in that case, there are certain systems that we will not provide to Israel that would aid that effort, because it's something that we do not want to be part of, given the damage that it would do to civilians. And again, not to achieve a durable, lasting, effective result for Israel and for its security. That's what the president said. We've said that in conversations with our Israeli partners. It's unfortunate that that leaked out, but the president responded forthrightly to a question when he was asked about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. He's literally being honest there. It's unfortunate that it leaked out. It really sucks. It really sucks that it leaked out. We did not want that to be leaked out at all, so that I wouldn't have to have this conversation, even though those conversations are leaked as a mechanism for PR. The reason why the Brandon administration leaks certain things like that is because they want to toe this line where they're saying that like they're exercising restraint and also simultaneously giving Israel the go ahead. They want to have it both ways, except you can't keep doing that over and over again. Also, as far as the leak goes, wasn't it specifically Biden being asked the question? And the other side, as far as the weapons transfers being paused, that was leaked by Israel. It wasn't even leaked by American media. It was literally Israel that leaked that information a week prior because they were mad that America dared to cut off access to certain weapons one time. Oh, so fucked up. Wonderful stuff overall.
Secretary, I want to ask you about the very latest on the deal to get the hostages released for a ceasefire. We know that the CIA director has since returned home. Did those talks fall apart because Prime Minister Netanyahu was threatening and is making moves to go into Rafah?
Look, it's important, first of all, to remind ourselves that Hamas could have ended this on day one. Well, this never, of course, should have happened.
Yeah, Israel could have ended this on day one, bitch. You.
There was actually a ceasefire.
Also, the idea that Hamas could have ended this on day one is extra ridiculous considering the fact that they did try and were met with you. What the hell are you talking about? They literally did try. They tried over and over again. They've set forward like 35 different ceasefire agreements since the first week. What are we talking about here, man? What the hell is this?
Before October 7th, on October 6th, that Hamas destroyed in the most barbaric way possible, humanly imaginable. But every day after that, Hamas could have decided to give up the hostages, stop hiding behind civilians, put down its weapons, and all of this would have been over. It still has that possibility. The quickest way for this to end is for Hamas to give up the hostages. We will get a ceasefire that we can build on and build to something more lasting and more durable. The different teams continue to talk. It remains our view that the fastest way to get to a ceasefire, the fastest way to get hostages home is through an agreement. And we're determined every single day to pursue that and to try to get it to happen. I think you can question whether Hamas actually wants to get this. It would also be the best way to make sure that we can really surge humanitarian assistance and better protect civilians in Gaza. Hamas purports to be interested in that. Its actions certainly demonstrate the opposite.
All right. Secretary.
Bro, they have no power. They have no power in this process. They can't magically stop. They can't magically stop Israeli rockets. Like, there's nothing they can do. The only thing they can do is try to get a ceasefire agreement that is a permanent ceasefire with hostage swaps. And they've literally time and time again mentioned how to get there, but it doesn't matter. All right, let's continue. Bernie Sanders popping off.
Now is the independent senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders. Senator Sanders, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good to be with you.
Well, we appreciate your being here on a busy Sunday morning. I want to start with your reaction to that State Department report and what you just heard from the Secretary of State who defended the report, the fact that there was no definitive conclusion drawn. He also said he has not seen a definitive plan from Israel to go into Rafah without mitigating civilian casualties. What was your takeaway, Senator?
Well, Chris and I have a lot of respect for Tony Blinken. He has an impossibly difficult
Boo.
job. But
Boo, Bernie.
The reality is I think any objective observer knows Israel has broken international law. It has broken American law. And in my view, Israel should not be receiving another nickel in U.S. military aid. Look, the facts are quite clear. Hamas is a terrible, disgusting terrorist organization that began this war. But what Israel has done over the last 7 months is not just gone to war against Hamas, it has gone to war against the entire Palestinian people, and the results have been absolutely catastrophic. I mean, Kristen, we're talking about not just 35,000 Palestinians dead and 77,000 wounded, 2/3 of whom are women and children. That is not the way you conduct a war in a civilized society to the degree that war is civilized. We're talking about 60% of the housing in Gaza having been destroyed. The civilian...
I can't watch this, bro. I can't watch this. It's just like, it breaks my heart. Hamas started this war. Come on, dude. I'm skipping it. I can't listen to Bernie Sanders, dude. Do you expect them to praise Hamas? No, dumbass. I don't expect them to praise Hamas. Do I sit around praising Hamas every day? Is that what I do here? Am I always like, I love Hamas so much? Al-Qassam Brigades for the win? Is that what I say? No. There's obviously a difference between praising Hamas and a difference between recognizing that Israel is an apartheid regime that set out a slow cooker that would inevitably yield violent resistance over the course of 75 years. Okay? Do you not find that there is a little bit of daylight between those two? I'm just saying, give him a break. He's better than most. No, I expect him to be infinitely better than all. That's Bernie Sanders. That's ridiculous. It breaks my goddamn heart to see such an important figure in American politics basically hit the same exact goddamn liberal Zionist line that you hear from like a Democratic senator from Maryland, you know what I mean? With a shit ton of funding from AIPAC. I still obviously will always have a lot of love for Bernie Sanders in my heart for everything he's done in advancing socialism in America in general. But this stuff is just like not something I can watch. It breaks my heart. Yes, of course I campaigned for Bernie. I maxed out the Bernie. I campaigned for him. And the reality is, like, all things considered, with the exception of this, and even on this issue, he's still far greater than the average American politician. I just expect more from him. I expect him to be truthful. Why do you expect so much from sock dems and dem socks? Okay, bro. Yes. I'm sorry that Bernie is not unconditionally offering support to Stalin or some shit. Or whatever your Jason Unruhe fan court has decided is actually the best way to talk about it.
Republicans are criticizing President Biden for pausing the delivery of high payload bombs to Israel. At a Wednesday hearing on the Defense Department budget, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham grilled Pentagon leaders.
If we stop weapons necessary to destroy...
Is it possible he's talking from a framing that will appeal to more people? No, that's just cope, man. This is who he is. This is what he believes on Israel. There's a reason why I haven't been watching a lot of Bernie Sanders stuff since October 7. His rhetoric on the matter went from worse to just like still pretty bad. Megaphonic says, to be honest, before 10-7, I think it was fairly aligned with the mainstream leftist position on Israel-Palestine, but 10-7 pushed him forward the Zionist side, whereas Israel's response pushed many of his supporters in the opposite direction, hence the schism. Yeah. It's ridiculous that he's saying like, dude, anyone that says Hamas started this war, I mean, that's crazy. That is an insane statement to make. It's just directly abject ahistorical nonsense. And it hurts my soul to see someone who I love so much repeat that propaganda line. I expect more from Bernie Sanders. It just kills my confidence in him. The slaves in the antebellum South started the violent repression in the Nat Turner Rebellion. The Holocaust was started when a Warsaw Ghetto resistance forces comprised of Jews decided to break out. Those would be ridiculous things to say. It's really so to argue that stance when you frame it in relation to any other historical equivalent. Yeah, it is. And that's precisely the way I'm doing that. Anyway, you're about to see some insane shit from Lindsey Graham, who is, I mean, just an overall nutter, okay?
Delivery of high payload bombs to Israel. At a Wednesday hearing on the Defense Department budget, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham grilled Pentagon leaders.
If we stop weapons necessary to destroy the enemies of the state of Israel at a time of great peril, we will pay a price. This is obscene. It is absurd. Give Israel what they need to fight the war they can't afford to lose. This is Hiroshima and Nagasaki on steroids.
And Senator Lindsey Graham joins me now. Senator Graham, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that very much. Look, you have been quite clear as
Happy Mother's Day. It's time to nuke Gaza and glass those Palestinian dogs as they are barking. Happy Mother's Day. I'm here to tell you about why we must nuke Gaza.
that you are opposed to President Biden's threat to withhold military aid if Israel does invade Rafah. But let me ask you this question. Why shouldn't Israel's war against Hamas proceed in a more precise way with a clear plan to mitigate civilian deaths in Gaza?
Well, I think it's impossible to mitigate civilian deaths in Gaza as long as Hamas uses their own population as human shields. I've never seen in the history of warfare such blatant efforts by an enemy, Hamas, to put civilians at risk. And the last thing you want to do is reward this behavior.
This is so like insane, bro. The only reason why this is even a conversation because Israel is killing civilians. That's it. Like, that's the only reason why this is even a point of contention. Because no other force throughout history, well, with the exception of some, at least in contemporary history, has been so ruthless upon a civilian population. The only other clear-cut examples are, again, now recognize this genocide, as this will be in the future as well.
They put weapons in mosques. They fire artillery rounds from apartment buildings. They put command centers under hospitals to maximize civilian casualties as Israel tries to...
I apologize. I should have said no other force outside of America.
...destroy the terrorist group. You don't want to reward this by restricting weapons to the victim of their attack. But let me just say this. This is Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. But this is a tough time for the world. What Senator Sanders said, not another nickel of military aid to the United States, is the most dangerous, irresponsible statement in the history of the U.S. relationship. This is not Vietnam. Israel is in a fight for their lives. Hamas says they will do it again and again and again. They're dedicated to the destruction of the Jewish state, not helping the Palestinian people. Iran, the great Satan, vows to destroy Israel. So does Hezbollah. Israel is surrounded by forces, terrorist groups that want to destroy the Jewish state, not help the Palestinians. This is 9/11 and Pearl Harbor all rolled into one. To abandon Israel under these circumstances would be outrageous, it would be dangerous, and Republicans are going to fight back against Bernie Sanders and the squad.
Senator, let me just push you a little bit, though, because, of course, the United States has provided Israel with tens of thousands of bombs and missiles just to prove some...
Bro, one other thing that doesn't get discussed a lot is seeing how passionate these guys get in their defense of Israel. Like, all things considered, it is a wild change of pace in comparison to any other issue that they're talking about. Like, they talk about Israel like it's their children that are going to be murdered, assassinated if they don't give Israel the opportunity to use their nukes on Gaza or some shit.
$14 billion in military aid last month. So the United States, even the IDF has said, has given it an extraordinary amount of support. I want to ask you, though, do you think Israel is in any way prepared to listen to work with President Biden? And is he trustworthy? And let me ask it this way. In a survey this week, more than half of Israelis said they thought Prime Minister Netanyahu's chief consideration was his own political survival. You've said you trust Israel more than the U.S. Defense Secretary. But why should America...
Bro, that's crazy. I didn't even know that. That is the most god-dang un-American thing I've ever heard, bro. He said he trusts the Israeli government more than he trusts the American Defense Department. What the f? That boy right there is doing treason. Oh, what is this? Check. This is a good contrast of what he's spewing. Pull this up. Yeah, we know, man. We know that Israel like directly uses Palestinian children as human shields when they're doing operations. We know. I know it's a news story. I'm saying that it's just common practice in general. It's like coming in here and talking about the top of the hour ad break. It's going to happen. It happens all the time at the top of every hour. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime. Here's the 3-minute ad break now. Any leftists using the same rhetoric with another nation will be crucified as a commie spy traitor. Yeah. Dude, Everything that the Israeli government says Hamas is doing, Israel has done 10 times worse, okay? It is always projection.
Trust Netanyahu to put the United States' interests first.
Americans should be all in helping Israel against an existential threat. The one thing Israel and America has in common, Hamas would attack us if they could. Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorism that shouts death to America, and Hezbollah is in the same camp. I've never heard anybody in Israel chant death to America. The people Israel is fighting are bent on destroying all of the Jews.
Why would they say death to America, dumbass? We are facilitating and funding and offering political cover for their genocide. Take their toys away a little bit and you'll hear them screaming some other shit. But as it stands, they have no reason to say that. Another gamer is upset about wokeness and name dropping you. Wokeness? Name dropping me? I'm not woke, man. I'm an anti-white racist, remember?
This is Holocaust Remembrance Month, for God's sakes. We should unequivocally support Israel. Yes, work with them to limit civilian casualties. They want to do that. I know they do. They have a whole battalion dedicated to that.
I know they do. They told me. They told me they do. They said Prinky promised, Lindsay. Also, I don't know if you've considered this, but Israel has no extradition policy to the United States of America. And I would like to, you know, maybe move there one day after I get into legal trouble for the kinds of boy pussy that I might be inclined to investigate personally. Yeah, you know, you're talking about all the genocide, but you haven't thought about how I might be inclined to move down to Israel later in my life, in my yonder years, as it has no jurisdiction. It has no extrajudicial or no policy of sending people back to the United States of America.
Withholding weapons to Israel is rewarding the tactics of Hamas to put civilians at risk. Here's my statement to the administration. Sit down with Israel, keep the weapons flowing, and work out a plan, if you can, that gets us all to where we need to be. I talked with Israel this morning. They are discussing with the Biden administration a way forward. I am somewhat hopeful we can jump over this impasse, but do not let Bernie Sanders run this war. Bernie Sanders and the squad are insane when it comes to how to defend Israel. He just said on national television, cut off every nickel of military aid to the Jewish state who's being threatened with oblivion. Shut these people down. This decision was political. He's trying to appease the radical left Biden is.
Senator, just to be clear, the administration's position is not to cut off every nickel. And I guess the question is, why does Israel need the most massive bombs that can potentially level an entire block in order to wage this war? Why can't it be more precise?
Listen, you know, here's what I would say about fighting an enemy who wants to kill you and your family. Why did we drop 2 bombs, nuclear bombs, on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to end a war that we couldn't afford to lose? You don't understand, apparently, what Israel is facing. They're facing...
Bro said, Israel's facing the Imperial Japanese forces. Bro, that's a whole-ass state. A whole-ass state that was doing colonial violence. And even then, we did not have to nuke Hiroshima nor Nagasaki, as a matter of fact. The idea that you would point to that to be like, yeah, and that's why Israel has the right to nuke Gaza is, I don't even know how to address this at that point. Like, what are you saying? This is Pearl Harbor and 9/11 all wrapped up into one for Israel. I guess the only reason why Israel hasn't nuked Gaza is because, like, they're far too close. You know what I mean? The nuclear fallout would also hurt Israel too. So once you start seeing Israeli citizens leave the Gaza envelope, you know, once they find like a safe distance, if you start watching Israeli citizens inside of the 67 boundaries move further and further away from the Gaza Strip, know that they're about to use a tactical nuke or some shit. Even though, why should they use a nuke? They've literally deployed multiple atomic bombs worth of munitions at this point.
3 groups. Iran, who has received $80 billion in aid. When Trump left office, they were exporting 300 barrels of oil a day. Now they're at 1.3 million a day. They've been enriched by Biden. They're taking that money to kill.
Why is Iran under such severe sanctions but still operating in the way that it does? I wonder if there was like a unilateral deal that we put together that took over like 12 years to put together, and of course famously was signed off on by obviously a black president, and therefore that was unconscionable, and therefore it must be cast aside. That's what Trump did. You have Trump to thank for on that front.
All the Jews. So when we were faced with destruction as a nation after Pearl Harbor, fighting the Germans and the Japanese, we decided to end the war by bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki with nuclear weapons. That was the right decision. Give Israel the bombs they need to end the war they can't afford to lose, and work with them to minimize casualties.
Senator, that military officials would argue that there has been so much technology since those bombs were dropped that for that very reason, that is why Israel and other developed countries can be more precise. But let me ask it this way, because President Biden is not the first president.
That's all you got for that? He just said nuke Gaza. She said, why would we have to nuke Gaza when Israel has more conventional weapons that it can use for more precise targeting? Like you don't have an issue with the nuking Gaza portion? Like that didn't even cross your mind? Like, I'm a bit of a woke ass pussy, okay? So obviously when I hear someone basically talking about like nukes, I'm like, hold up, that seems insane, actually. What are you saying? You seem like a bad person. Like, what the do you mean? I wouldn't be like, well, why would they nuke? There's better ways of killing a bunch of people.
Use arms shipments to try to influence Israeli policy. As you know, former President Ronald Reagan on multiple occasions withheld weapons to impact Israel's military actions. Did President Reagan show that using U.S. military aid as leverage can actually be an effective way to rein in and impact Israel's policy?
When you're telling the world you're going to restrict weapons delivery to the Jewish state who is fighting a three-front war for their survival, it emboldens Iran, it emboldens Hamas. Sinwar is probably juiced up on the idea there's daylight between the United States and Israel. The hostage deal is harder. This is the worst decision in the history of the U.S. Israel relationship to deny weapons at a time the Jewish state could be destroyed.
I mean, he already said he trusts Israel more than he trusts his own military. So, like, it's not that crazy that he would also attack another sacred cow in the Republican mythos, Ronald Reagan. He's dick riding Israel so hard, he's like sidestepping the Ronald Reagan disagreement.
So here's what I would say. There is some hope we can get over this. Non-negotiable to the destruction of Hamas. Nobody in Israel will allow Hamas to be standing militarily or politically when this is over. How we get there is subject to negotiation. My problem is not with the weapons that Israel is using. My problem is with the tactics that Hamas is using, and the idea that America would not send a nickel of aid, echoed by a United States senator when all the Jews are trying to be killed by radical Islamic groups, tells us where we're at as a nation.
What are you saying? He's on a different planet, dude. He's like, all the Jews are under attack by radical Islamic Hamas. Like, what are we talking about, man? Bro thinks it's October 9. This is also part of the reason why I think it's really annoying when Bernie Sanders doesn't come out stronger and like even engages in some like ahistorical bullshit when talking about Israel. Because, bro, they're calling you a bad Jew out here. Bernardo, they're calling you a bad Jew, bro. This genteel piece of shit is calling you a bad Jew in broad daylight. Bernie, what are you doing? Talking about how this war started by Hamas. This guy Albick is calling Bernie a capo. And he's over here being like, no, you don't understand. Hamas started this war, actually. Like, he's saying you want the Jews dead, Bernie. That's what he's saying.
The Republican Party is with Israel without apology.
Well, historians would say, why is it okay for Reagan to do it and not President Biden? But let me ask you about
Well,
the
why is it
big
okay?
deal.
Well, can I say this? Why is it okay for America to drop 2 nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki?
Why is he getting so passionate, bro? You're so insane, dude. Oh my God. Why is it okay for Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Yeah, great question. It wasn't okay, actually. So maybe you should reconsider everything else, you asshole. Oh my God. It's like we did the big bad. Why can't Israel do the big bad too? Israel gets to nuke Gaza. I don't understand. We did a genocide of the Native Americans. Okay, we killed them Indians. All right. Israel gets to do that to the Palestinian Indians. Excuse me. Can you find excuses to do this accent more often? No.
To end their existential threat war. Why was it okay for us to do that? I thought it was
But
okay.
it wasn't. And you're wrong. It was not. Oh my God. Okay.
To Israel, do
Senator,
whatever you have to do to survive as a Jewish state.
Senator, again, military officials say
Whatever
the
you have to
technology
do.
has changed. But let me ask you about how
Yeah,
all
these
of this
military
could
officials
impact.
that you're talking
Let me-
about
Let me ask you
are
something.
full of crap.
Let me ask you something that I know you care a lot about, and that is the Saudi normalization deal. How
Yes.
would a ground invasion into Rafah impact what you believe is critical, getting a deal for normalization in the region with Saudi Arabia?
Well, everybody knows
Really good.
that the House of Saud is also Hamas. Okay, if they tell Israel don't go into to Rafah, that means they're also Hamas. Hamas is taking over the House of Saud, which is why Israel should nuke Saudi Arabia. That's right, folks. I'm here to tell you right now, Israel gets the nuke. You know what? I'm in Seneca, South Carolina right now. If enough people in Seneca, South Carolina were also talking about how there needs to be a ceasefire, I'd be begging Israel to nuke me. Okay? That's right. Israel, nuke Langley, Virginia. Okay? Do you understand me? Israel gets to nuke them all. I think there's no other country on the planet other than Israel. It's the most moral nation on the planet. It's the most democratic nation on the planet. I think Israel should nuke Riyadh next. And then when they're done with that, they should turn their nuclear weapons in their arsenal to also Tehran, glass Iran. And if they're still not satiated with their bloodthirst, they should nuke D.C., Washington, D.C. That's right. That's right, folks. Israel could come and kill me right now. And I would say, thank you, sir. Give me more of that. Using our weapons, as a matter of fact. He's literally the meme. Yeah, I know. Holding Blood Feast is just straight up a real thing. Please, dear God, I want you to nuke me so bad. This is what I care about. South Carolina is one of the poorest states, okay? South Carolina, massive healthcare problems, healthcare complications. Do you think I give a Absolutely not. Kill all the poor, okay? Especially the black ones. You understand me? I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about the poor. You know what I do give a shit about? Israel, okay? Israel now, Israel forever. Cham Israel Chai. That's right, I learned that. Them Jews were saying that earlier. I've been repeating it nonstop. Am Israel Chai. I heard it. They were saying it. I started repeating it. I've been saying it nonstop. As a Jew, I have to give you mad respect on that cha. You really hit it, bro. Hell yeah, dude. Lindsay would never be able to hit that cha, though. You got a little lost in that one. If you think I've lost it, then you weren't paying attention. It is kind of in a funny way. Who taught you Am Israel Chai? That's secret Jewish knowledge. No, it's not. Honestly, the more this continues, the more you hear how unhinged these Republicans are. It is sadly not secret Jewish knowledge. Yeah. You can thank the Zionists for that, by the way. They say it all the time. Oh my God. Not a day goes by. It's usually sandwiched between we are the victims and the Palestinians are dogs. That's why even Lindsey Jebediah Graham would know the secret Jewish scrolls, the ancient tomes. Am Israel Chai. I'm telling you.
Question. Number one, I want to keep pursuing this because you asked Tony a good question. What happens the day after? To my friends in Israel, what happens the day after? To Tony, what happens the day after? I want the Arab world, the UAE and Saudi Arabia, to come in and give the Palestinian people hope once we destroy Hamas. I want normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel, and that's the worst nightmare for Iran. That's why October 7th, I think, happened. Here's what's happening. When you deny weapons, Israel weapons, the Saudis are beginning to wonder, are we a good ally? Should I sign up to this? Will they turn on me if I get in a conflict? So I think the biggest threat to the deal is to use Rafah invasion.
My dad's a Zionist. He isn't a Jew, but me, my sisters, and my mom are. And he's literally the only Zionist. Says a lot. Yep. I mean, you just described America right there. The most rabid Zionists in this country, the most rabid Zionists in this country are not Zionist Jews, okay? I mean, some of them are rabid. Like, let's be real. Obviously, you see them rocking JDL shit. You see them rocking the Kahana stuff. Obviously, those guys are like super extreme. But the most rabid and the most important political group, the most important group with outsized political power are evangelical Protestant Zionists, okay? They are insane. That's why you hear the likes of Mike Johnson. Okay, Rabbi Shmuley, fine. Like, yes, there are examples of rabid Zionist Jews as well. I'm telling you, though, the largest group of individuals in this country that are the most actively dick-riding Israel are not Zionist Jews. They are Zionist Christians. Jews are the most rabid Zionists. This is not true. You, my friend, have never met an evangelical. With a name like Ozzy Warrior, I suspect that you have personally never met a psychopathic Southern Christian from a televangelist church. Hold on.
The deal is a negotiating tool to back Israel off. I am still going to pursue the deal. I hope we can get this issue with the weapons transfers behind us, and we can get back on setting the conditions where we can normalize between Saudi Arabia and Israel, and as part of that, have a new Palestinian opportunity where they'll have a better life when the Arabs help them rebuild Gaza and the West Bank with a new governing structure. I'm not giving up on that. I've just never been more worried about the signals we're sending to our enemies than I am right now. What we're doing to Israel is unconscionable, and it needs to stop. We need to be with Israel without apology.
Very quickly, Senator, before I let you go, a quick question about 2024. Will you accept the results of the 2024 election, no matter who
Oh, my God. Here we go.
wins?
Bullshit.
Yeah, I'll accept it. I think, if there's no massive cheating, I accepted 2020. Here's what I would say. President Trump is poised to win. He said last night, when it comes to Israel, I will have their back. I will give them what they need. Bernie Sanders is wrong about the polling here. Most Americans, 80%, side with Israel. The 20%, unfortunately, are in Congress and the State Department that side with Hamas. That's the problem with this war.
All right, Senator
Thank
Sanders, we are out of time. Senator Graham, I should say. You just invoked the other senator's name.
We're often confused. We're often confused. Yeah.
Senator Lindsey Graham, thank you so much.
Happy
We're out
Mother's
of
Day.
time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your joining
Thank
us.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.